How much money does it take to get started investing in real estate? Is it really possible to do with no money down? That is the question and answer that we unpack today on the BiggerPockets Podcast. And today's episode is extra special because we are interviewing a very smart, sophisticated, talented, good-looking guest, me. In this interview, I actually share how I built my flip and rental portfolio using very little of my own money. And I'll share a lot of tips for how you can do the same. Just a reminder, if you are not yet a member of BiggerPockets, the free real estate investor social network, you can join up by visiting BiggerPockets.com or simply click this link right here to download our free gift to you, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing. And also, if you have not yet read the other book that we just released on BiggerPockets, the book on investing in real estate with no and low money down, written by me, you can get it on Amazon or by clicking this link right here or going to BiggerPockets.com/no money. And with that, let's get to the interview with Brandon Turner, me. This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show number 92.
This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 92. What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host to the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with my fabulous co-host. Wait a second. Something's not right here. Today, I'm interviewing my co-host. So today is the Josh Dorkin Show.
Does that make me not a co-host just because I'm being interviewed?
You're being demoted, my friend.
Wait, does that mean all our guests are demoted of us? How cocky.
Don't confuse me.
Wow.
Don't confuse me. All right. So today is the no and low money down episode. And today I'm going to be interviewing you, Mr. Brandon Turner. Whew. So technically you're not really my co-host, even though you kind of are. But anyway.
You can't stop me from talking anyway. I'm going to.
I know. And for those people who've never listened to the show before, normally our show is Brandon and myself talking to other people. Sometimes we talk amongst ourselves. But today's going to be a very different show and a great one at that. So that said, very, 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 very quickly, no money down. Let's talk about that really quick before we get into the show. No money down it's a buzz phrase in real estate investing, and we're going to take it kind of from a different standpoint here. We're going to talk about numerous strategies that our guest, this guy, Brandon Turner, that's right, has used to invest with little or nothing out of his own pocket. That's because he has nothing in his pocket. We're going to talk about the dirty and dangerous side of creative investing as well, and what you can do to watch out for it. Finally, the stuff that we do cover today is not just for new real estate investors. It's for anybody looking to do more deals. So no matter where you are in your real estate journey, this show is definitely going to be for you. And there's just a ton of stuff we're going to cover, and I'm really excited. And I know Brandon is as well, because we've had a lot of people asking for this particular show.
Yeah. And this is a question that we get, every single day Josh and I get from an email or on the forums or in a private message. It's always, I got no money, or I don't have a lot of money, or even like guys who have money, but they want to get bigger projects. They don't have enough, right? We get this question every single day. How do I do this? So today, hopefully we can shed some light on that.
Yeah. Let's do it. All right.
Cool.
So before we do get into the show, we've got today's
quick tip.
All right. Today's quick tip. Today we are releasing, finally, drum roll, please. There we go. Today we're releasing a brand new book and announcing it here on the podcast first. We've been talking about it for months and months, but today it's officially happening. This is Woo-hoo. It. It's called The Book on Investing in Real Estate with No and Low Money Down, and it was written by my co-host here, the man, the myth, Mr. Brandon Turner.
Hey, that's me.
All right, Brandon. So really quickly, maybe you can give us a quick 30-second explanation of what the book's about, and then we're going to kind of roll on and get into this thing.
Sure. All right, so it starts because like you mentioned earlier, right, every deal that I've done, I've generally had no money in my pocket, right? So I'm obviously not some like super genius in figuring this out. I just like hustled and tried and screwed up a whole lot on kind of my path. So this book is kind of, we put together, I don't know, about a dozen, maybe a few dozen if you combine the different within each chapter, but different strategies that I've used for investing in real estate without using a whole lot of my own money. Now, not everything is $0, but some of it's a few $1,000s or less. So I think people on BP are going to like it. And I think it turned out pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really pleased, but we'll talk about it more later. So
cool.
Actually, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to, kind of get into some of the meat here on the show, which is, I think, what's exciting. I'm going to interview Brandon about his real estate journey, how he's done all these things, all these different deals. And for those of you guys who might want to pick up the book, you can get it today at biggerpockets.com/no money. That's biggerpockets.com/no money.
That you can. Oh,
Yeah.
And before I forget, because this is a podcast, I wanted to make sure to mention this. We did do an audio book version of this. So you can listen in your car. It's I think it's like 8 hours long of actual like audio. So somewhere between 7 and 8 hours. Anyway, and there's a bunch of other cool stuff you get. But yeah, we're going to talk about it all later. So
nice. Yeah, it turned out great, I think. And we had a lot of people request this from our last book. So we've decided to add that, and we'll talk more about it later. Why don't we just kind of get into this thing, get into Brandon's life, or those of you who know him, lack thereof. And before we do that, why don't we let you give a shout out to today's sponsor?
I'd love to. Today's sponsor is the book on investing in real estate with no money down. Oh, pick up a copy. All right.
Get a copy. All right, guys. Let's dig into this. My guest today, as you know, is Brandon Turner. So Brandon, how are you? Welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you here today.
Thank you, Josh. It's good to be here. I listen to you every single week on the podcast, and I'm always like, I don't know, amazed by you and your co-host there. You guys have a great, rapport, and your co-host is really good looking too.
Nice. You're also living in a fantasy world. That's great. All right, man, let's dig into this. Let's talk about you and your first deal. So tell us about it.
Sure. I'm actually like this because I don't think you and I have even ever talked about like how I got started. Like I don't think even in our like millions of hours of conversations we've gone over this. So, all right. So my first deal was what we like to call like a live-in flip, or some people call it a flip-in. So I bought. Let me actually go back. Yeah. So let me go back. In college, I needed a place to live. I was going to like a few different colleges, kind of like community college, and then I graduated from one of them, and I was moving on, and I was going to get married pretty soon, and I needed a place to live, so I was looking for a house to rent. And my real estate agent friend, who was an agent, said, "Hey, why don't you just buy a house? It's cheaper." And I looked at the numbers, and sure enough, it probably would be cheaper. So I was raised by.
Go ahead. Really quickly, where were you living? I mean,
I was out here at the time. Well, I graduated college in Minnesota, and then I moved out to Washington State, where I live today.
So you were in Podunk at the time?
I was in Podunk at the time, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was in like the city part of Podunk at the time.
Okay.
Right, Aberdeen, Washington.
City Dunk.
All right, so yeah, I'm in like the city part, right? So I was raised by a garage sale mom, right? So like my mom went to garage sales every Saturday, packed all the kids in the minivan, and we'd drive around the garage sales, and then she would like buy just crap that we didn't need, and then fill our garage with it, and then twice a year she'd have a garage sale and sell it all. And I don't think I think she actually made money off of this, but like I wouldn't do it today. But I do. Yeah. But the lesson I learned from that was to buy a good deal, right? My mom always taught me like never offer full price, always get a good deal. So that's the only thing I knew about real estate at the time, besides that it existed, is I'm like, I'm going to buy a good deal. So I went on and asked my agent what's the cheapest house in our county, and she found it, and I said, okay, well, let's buy it. And back then, this is 2007. Now this part of the story might not apply to everyone, because I'm a 21-year-old kid, and I have no credit. And I have my job. I'm making like $9.50 an hour or something like that.
Nice.
And yeah,
what were you doing at the time, by the way?
I was working at a group home for like developmentally disabled adults.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was like an overnight job. So I'm making no money, I had no credit, really no job stability, just out of school, and had no personal savings of my own money whatsoever. Right. And it's time to go buy a house. And so I tell the bank this, and being 2007, what do they say? Sure, here, take $250,000. Yeah, come on.
Here's $1 million.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. They actually approved me for it was like 260 or 280. But again, garage sale mom, I knew I was, at least I was trained not to do that. So I actually bought an $80,000 house, and it needed work. So for the next like 9 months, me and some friends fixed it up, and we lived in it, and then we sold it. And it wasn't a plan to sell it. I bought it just to live in, but then I realized I had equity in it, and the market was still like good. It was like late 2007, and so we sold it right as the market was looking over the
nice.
Yeah, the downfall. Yeah, top of the, yeah, I mean, it was as top as you could possibly get, and I got out.
Yep.
Now, like, I got lucky there. I mean, I fully will admit that was a lucky deal, and I made about $20,000 off that deal.
Okay.
You know, it was good. It was like 20 grand. It paid for my wedding. I got paid cash for my wedding. Well, I borrowed it from my dad, and then when it closed,
big spender. Look at you.
look at me.
Fancy.
Yeah, we had a fancy wedding. No, but
Nice.
there is one story. So in the midst of this, while we're in closing on this property, it leads me into the second property, which hopefully you're going to ask me about, because
I'm not going to.
I want to tell you about the second property.
Well, I wanted to know the numbers on that property. So you spent,
okay.
How much was the loan for? Give me the quick numbers.
Sure. I think the loan was right on 80,000. It was essentially a 100% loan. I think what they did at the time, and this is what the second loan was as well, is they did these like weird, like it was like 80-20 loans, right? So you get 80% first mortgage, 20% second mortgage, and I think it was essentially that. So I bought it for 80. I put 25 into it, and then sold it for 130 something.
Okay. And it took about 6 months to sell?
Yeah, it actually took pretty quick to sell, probably like 3 months to sell, but it was...
Well, I mean, the rehab process.
Yeah, the whole thing, beginning to end, was just under a year. I bought it December. I sold it on Halloween. We closed on Halloween, so October 31st. And because I remember we were emptying the house out as trick-or-treaters were coming by, and we were giving them cans of pop because we didn't have any candy. So we're like...
Cans of pop? What's that? What's pop?
Soda. Did you get...
Oh, soda.
Is that
throwing cans of soda trick-or-treaters?
Well, like we were like cleaning out our fridge, handing things to kids because that's all we had in our house. So anyway, so during this time we needed a place to live, and so my agent again said, well, you know, there's a duplex just came on the market. Why not live in the duplex and you can rent out one half and live in the other half? And I'm like, that's a smart idea. I was like, this is great. And then I looked at the paper and I saw I'm going to make 20 grand off this live and flip, and I'm like, you know, this is what my life's going to be. I'm going to become a real estate investor. At that point, I was like, I'm going to be a real estate investor. So I tell, at the time I was studying for the law school. Like I wanted to take, I took the LSAT. I was going to law school, and I called my dad and I say the words, I'm not going to law school anymore. I was like, I discovered a whole new like adventure. I'm going to be a real estate investor. I just, you know, I'm flipping this house. It's great. And he actually like helped me out a little bit with it. And like, so he knew I was doing it. And then, I'm not going to go to law school anymore. I'm going to be a real estate investor. I'm going to go buy a duplex and start rental properties. And he looked at me and said, you know, you're crazy. Like you're going to, his words, I think, were essentially, you're going to go broke and be homeless because your tenants aren't going to pay rent. And then you're not going to have the money to pay for it. You're going to get kicked out on the street, and your life's going to be over. And that was the message I got. And
Nostradamus, look out.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, he's right. Right. Like he's right. Like, I don't know. I can't cover 2 payments. What if a tenant doesn't pay? We got a lot of, you know, bad people around here. And so that night, I went online and I typed into Google what to do when tenants don't pay. And I should have grabbed it for this thing. I still have the paper that I got off the internet, and it was on a site called BiggerPockets. So this is like, I think this was 2000 and it was later than 2001 when I got this one. Must have been 2000. I lied. Did I say 2001 earlier? Because I graduated.
You said 7 on the property. So
okay, yeah. I think earlier I said the number 2001, but I meant 2007 if I said 2001. So this is 2007. I find this paper and it says, the title is called "What to Do When Tenants Don't Pay Rent," and it was an article. You remember you used to have articles on BiggerPockets?
Articles, I do remember.
Yeah, you used to have articles, right? So it was an article, and I read it, and it blew my mind in that I was like, there are people actually doing this. And they're not homeless and broke living under bridges. Like there's actually people with an answer. And so that is how I found BiggerPockets the first time. I thought people often think that I started the site, but just because, you know, I'm better looking than you, I didn't start those.
Wow. No, but megalomania, little, you know, personality problem.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you'd been around for a few years, I think. Probably what, 2? When did you start?
So we started October 22nd, 2004, and those of you who are listening when this comes out, the 10-year anniversary of BiggerPockets is coming next week, and we're really excited. I know I'm extremely ecstatic, and yeah, you know what? It's funny. People all the time come up to me. They're like, "Yeah, so actually last week, it was this week. Somebody's like, you know, you've got a really good." In fact, it was a reporter, which really like killed me. It was a reporter. And this guy's like, I love your site. It's amazing. You know, it's really, really awesome. So tell me, how did Brandon Turner start it, and what do you do there? And I just about lost it. But listen, you do such a great job here, and
Thanks.
You're a great asset, and people love you, and whatever. The facts will come out.
Yeah, well, yeah, they'll figure it out. So,
right. So you found.
So I found BP. That's
Yep.
how I got connected with BP, and that's when I said, okay, there are answers to these questions that people have, and I mean, like, just like that to pull up my story here and just talk to the people directly listening to this podcast. Like, if that is you, if you have questions, or if there's people like that look at you and are saying, hey, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like, the point is, there are answers to the questions that people have. Like, it's not like we're the first ones to invent this game. This has been around for thousands and thousands of years. So, there are answers. There are ways to figure it all out. And those people who seek out those answers are the ones that seem to, find good success. So with that,
awesome.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So let's get in here. You're talking about this duplex. And you're kind of looking for answers, but I feel like I think I know the story. I mean, the second house was not like a duplex. This was like you went and bought like the house of one of the most famous icons on the planet.
Well, I didn't know that at the time, though.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't know that. So here's the story.
So the second deal was the Cobain house, right?
It was. The second deal was the Cobain house. So basically what it was is I bought two houses on one lot, little tiny one house, little tiny other house. We paid, oh boy, I really should have written out these numbers before the show. I knew we were going to talk about this.
Way to be prepared.
I know, way to be prepared. I think it was 82 for the duplex for two houses on one lot. And they're, just little shacks essentially, and they were decent.
So this was a duplex. It was a duplex because it was two houses.
Because it's two houses on one lot, yeah. But it was like a bungalow and a little 2-bedroom. So 2-bedroom, 1-bath house and a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house. So my wife and I moved into the 1-bedroom, 1-bath house, remodeled the entire thing on the inside, and then moved in some friends into the front one, and that's a whole different story that we won't necessarily get into.
Sounds like trouble.
Yeah, it was bad. He got arrested, and it was
good friends.
Good friends. And I mean that I could go on all day about the things you don't want to do, and that's one of them. But we'll talk about that maybe later. But so I rented to some friends, and then they moved out later when he got arrested, and moved some other people in, and it actually was great. And here's what I loved about that. First of all, I financed that with what was very similar to an FHA loan. So we're going to talk about maybe FHA maybe later, and I talk about it in the book a little bit, or actually a whole chapter on it. But the idea was, I think that loan, it wasn't technically FHA, but it was like 4% down, which FHA is 3.5% down. It was like a 4% down loan from a bank, which they don't have that exact loan because FHA became more popular. But yeah, we bought it with almost nothing down. We put our sweat equity into painting it, and I sanded the floors myself and made it look really nice. We lived there. Our total mortgage payment was $600 a month, including tax and insurance. Everything was $600. We rented the front house for $650 a month. And at that moment, like, I realized like something like flipped in my head, and I'm like, holy.
Wait, 600 was for both properties?
Yeah, for the whole thing, it was $600 payment, and we were getting $650 out of the month. Now we had to pay water and sewer, and that was $100 a month. But essentially, I was living for free plus utilities, and getting paid to learn how to be a landlord. And
that's because you live in the middle of nowhere.
Because I got a friend, Jeremy, who's doing that right now in Minneapolis.
You could do it.
You can do it anyway. Yeah, you can do it. We know a guy. We interviewed him on the podcast back like 6 months ago, who's doing it in Boston. He bought like a $600,000 triplex, right? Yeah. And like Paula Pant, she's doing it down in Atlanta.
House hacking, yeah,
love this. So this is where it all came from. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I just stumbled across it, but it worked well. So anyway, the Cobain part of that, people want to know. The idea was, or the story was, we moved out a couple years later, a year and a half later, moved other tenants into the back. The lady's still there. Cute old lady. I love her. And she... the people in the front house at that point, some other people moved out and new people moved in, and everybody who lived there, including my friend and later people on, would always call and say, there's flashes in our window every few days. There's flashes in the window. I don't know why there's flashes in the window. And I thought the county was just doing a bunch of like work or something, or appraising or whatever. But for years, people just randomly take pictures of the house. And then we found out when some Swedish tourists knocked on the door that it was Kurt Cobain's childhood home, like where he was born. He actually lived in both halves of the duplex, both houses, from like 0 to 6 months, and then 6 months to 2 years, and then he moved on. So I can officially say I'm the only person alive who owns 2 of Kurt Cobain's houses.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And if anybody's interested, they're for sale.
They are for sale. I did list them, and I doubled the price on them, hoping that some rich Swedish tourist will buy them for nostalgic sake. But
so if you're a fan of Nirvana, then
you can come talk to me. Yeah, but here's the cool thing about this property, is that, and I wrote a post. My second post ever for BP was called this. It was called "How I Bought Two of Kurt Cobain's Former Houses and Why That's Not Even the Best Part." Right? Because the best part had nothing to do with the story. I didn't buy it knowing it was even there. The best part is that this is a property right now today. After paying water, sewer, garbage, budgeting for vacancies, maintenance, all those things, I'm still clearing $250, sometimes $300 a month in income on that property. And they're stable. They're in a great location, 30-year fixed mortgage. Because when you house hack and you use a mortgage like a 30-year fixed mortgage, when you move out, you don't have to get a new mortgage that stays with you. It stays with the property. And yeah, I love that property. It's one of my favorites.
Can you move out right away, or is there?
I think you have to stay a year. I believe. I'm not a mortgage person, but I've always heard 1 year is what they tell me.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is. Oh,
cool.
That's great. All right, so we got the first two deals. I mean, do you think? Well, actually, I know you do. House hacking is something that you really recommend people. We've talked about it a couple times, but. Yeah, do you have anything you want to kind of add on that, or?
It's got to fit, right? I mean, like, we know it's got to fit your situation. I mean, like, you, Josh, are not going to go and live in a crappy duplex in, Aberdeen, Washington. Like that, it's one bedroom, one bath. Like, it just doesn't work for some people. Right. You might live in an area that doesn't work. However, if you think about it, both things I did were house hacking, and I didn't know it. You can buy a flip. You can buy a house to fix up and then sell a couple years later. Or you could buy a multifamily house to live in. I mean, both those kind of are enabled to use what you have to do anyway. You have to have a place to live no matter what. So why not combine that with your investment and get started and get free on the job training while you're doing it? That's nice. That's my thing.
Great. Good advice. Good advice. All right. So what's next? I mean, we're 07, 08. I mean, the bubble's probably getting close to popping.
Yeah, it was crashing as I was buying this property. So it was like going over that hill.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, what did you do? I mean, you bought these properties.
Well, I did what a lot of people did. Well, I mean, a lot of people did. We looked around and like the market was like, a typical single family house in my area was going to sell between 120 and 130. That was our market at the time. For like a certain type. I mean, obviously there's a range, but let's just say 120, 130. Yep. The market dropped to like 110. And I'm like, everything's on sale. So I jumped in with both feet. I'm like, I'm going to be a house flipper. Now I got my housing paid for free. Now I'm going to flip some houses because...
And you're buying on the way down.
And I'm buying on the way down. So I watched the flipping shows. I mean, that's what got me really excited about flipping. I watched all the flipping shows and I love them. And there were so many of them at the time. I worked the overnight job, remember? So overnight I would watch them. Like there'd be like 9-hour marathons of like the flipping shows. And I'd watch just one after another. And I didn't realize that we weren't at the bottom of the market. And I don't think anybody did. I don't know if there was a way to figure that out, right? Nobody knew where the bottom was. So I actually bought the cheapest house in the entire area to flip, and it was like $50,000. And I put in $40,000 worth of work, so I was up to about 90 total. And I quit my job at this point for the first time. I quit my job a few times in my life. First time I quit my job, I'm going to flip houses and make millions. Bought this house for $50,000, put 40 into it. And then let me tell you how I financed it before I was going to say, yeah. Okay, yeah.
That was my question.
Because I have a better story that's kind of related to that. But so I financed it with a hard money lender, and for those people who what is it? So for those people who don't know what a hard money lender is, they play a very good role in a very limited role in real estate. So I do have a whole chapter on it in the book, but there's a
I wasn't oohing like, oh, they're terrible people. I was oohing excitement.
I got you. So the idea is these companies, they can be an individual person, but typically they're companies who are professional in doing this. This is what they do. They lend money at extremely high interest rates, like anywhere between 12 to 15, 16%. And then they charge you hefty fees, like anywhere between 2, 3, 4, 5% of the purchase price and a fee. So my first guy was 10% interest and 10 points. Which 10 points is a lot, but on a $50,000 property.
That's loan shark right there. I mean, that's, hard money. Okay. 10%. I don't have 10 points. Crazy.
But that is because it was such low price, right? So $5,000 was the fee he charged. It's not
still 10 points, man.
Yeah. And actually it was more than that. It was $9,000 because he actually lent the entire purchase price and the repair costs. So he lent the entire thing. So it was like a $9,000 fee on top of it. And I think it was actually maybe like, I borrowed 35 from him, I think it was, and then somehow I worked that out. So essentially the loan amount was for $90,000. And I'm still like thinking this house is going to sell. It was the most beautiful house. Now, me and my wife actually fixed the thing up with a couple buddies, but mostly me and my wife would go there every day and work on it for an entire year. This is the year of 2008. So I worked on it the whole year as the market just is, crumbling. The U.S. market is crumbling, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no. Like, I'm like watching this happen, but I didn't budget for a contractor to come in, so I had to do it myself. I mean, my budget was, and we did everything. Bottom to top, everything from roof, foundation, and everything in between. I mean, I left the wood floors. I finished them, refinished them. And then the walls, we left most of the drywall. But gutted the kitchen, added a bathroom, added it upstairs, all the stuff. We listed it at $139 to sell. And I'm like, seeing like, 50 grand in my future. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. And then it goes to like, it doesn't sell. So we drop it to 134, then 129, then 124, then 120. And still, I can't chase the market fast enough as how far it's falling. And that is what I'm like. And so, I forgot to say, hard money lenders, the thing are the high points, high fees, and short term. So this guy allowed for 2 years. Now that's actually really long for a hard money lender. Most only allow a year. He allowed for 2 years. So we spent 1 year working on it. It sat on the market for 7 months and nothing. I mean, I was chasing the market and it wasn't going anywhere. And so I'm like, freaked out what to do. I'm talking to the lender, trying to work,
And really quickly, what happens if you hit 2 years?
Yeah, he can foreclose on you. Like the hard money lender can, and they will. I mean, they might work with you, but that was a scary time. I mean, I didn't know what to do. So this is actually where like my entry into other kinds of creative finance came from. And what I did, so my best ideas I've ever had have come at 3 a.m. after like 7 hours of brainstorming and like sweating in bed. Like, I mean, like that's really like where the best ideas have come from. And I think most people are like that. It's probably for BiggerPockets too, right? Like,
not while sweating in bed.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, like they come after
I'm
like
sweating in bed. I'm not thinking about real estate. But
Yeah. Josh Dorkin, making me all flustered.
My brainstorms come in the shower.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, wherever, right? Like it's when you're worried.
We all have our own place.
Yeah, you're focused on something, you're thinking about it. And that's when it came to me. I said, okay, I'm going to add on a partner. Now, I'm not afraid to admit this. I went and called home to Dad, right? The same guy who told me you're going to go broke, homeless. I said, Dad, here's my problem.
Can we role play this out? No. Let's repeat the script of that.
Okay. All right. I'm like, hey, Dad, what's up?
Hey, son, what's going on?
So how would you like to make some money?
Oh, is this that real estate thing you're talking about?
Yeah. About. The very Minnesotan accent. That was good.
All right, so forget the role play. You go to your dad.
I go to my dad, and I asked him. Yep, I said I got a problem. I've got a house, and I'm in trouble, and I can't sell it. Now, granted, what I could have done is drop the price to $95,000 and fire sold it.
Yeah,
that was my worst case. I mean, that was my last option, and I think it would have sold there. I'm sure it would have, but I didn't. Hey, quick tip for everyone listening. One of the main reasons this house did not sell, it actually probably could have sold if it wasn't for one thing. There were 2 things. Dog number 1 and dog number 2 in the backyard. Like, this is a thing nobody thinks about, right? These dogs barked nonstop for hours and hours and hours and hours a day. I mean, hours a day. They would just bark, and they were huge dogs, like pit bulls or something like that.
These were not
the neighbor dogs. Yep, that borderline backyard. So I had probably 3 different people that came and looked at the house that put in offers that backed out during that period because of the dogs. They all cited the same thing, the dogs. And so did
you eventually kill the dogs? Is that how you sold it?
I wanted to so bad. I wanted to get like pounds of chocolate and chuck it over the thing. But I'm a nice guy. But I was so mad at those dogs.
I don't advocate such a thing.
No, don't do it. That's not the quick tip. The quick tip is know your surroundings. Yeah. Like know your neighbors when you're going to flip a house.
That should go for everything, by the way. I mean, if you're looking at a buy and hold, you want to do the same thing. And let me add to this quick tip. Not only do you want to look at it during the day, you want to look at it at night, first thing in the morning. You want to go and visit this property at all hours of the day because that's the only way you're going to actually figure out what's happening with the surroundings. And definitely talk to the neighbors. That's like a big one. So.
And I went and talked to them about the dogs a few times, and they just blew me off and said, I'm not doing anything, screw you, whatever. Like, it was just, It was rough. I had the dog catcher come out several times, but he wouldn't do anything.
They actually have dog catchers?
Yeah, like, well, they call
like
them
in the cartoons,
animal.
with the big old net.
Yeah, they call them animal enforcement agent or
Animal
something.
control,
I don't know. Animal control. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I don't call him dog catcher like the cartoons, but I guess I do call him that. Anyway, so my dad agreed to, and here's what we did. Here's how we saved the deal. We added my dad to the title of the property. And I told the hard money lender I was doing this, so it wasn't like shady. We added him to the title. We went to the courthouse and added him on the title. Then we went to a bank and said, hey, look, we've got this house. My dad's on title. He makes really good income because I didn't have a job.
Yep.
I didn't have a job. So he makes great income. He makes great credit. He's got everything he needs. He's the perfect borrower. Can we get a borrower? Borrower. So the bank said, great. Okay, we'll refinance it. So they gave us $92,000. And we paid off the hard money lender, and I still have that house today. The tenants that moved in right then are still there today with me. It's actually my main general contractor I use all the time is actually my own tenant, which is a little bit weird situation, but yeah.
So your plan was to flip. The market's going down. You couldn't chase it fast enough, and you didn't have a backup plan. So when you bought this property as a novice investor, you didn't really think, hey, what are the other options I've got here? But circumstance made it so that you had to come up with that and figure it out.
Yep.
Okay. So you brought on a partner. Partner allowed you to refi.
Yep.
And the refi got you out from the hard money loan.
Yep. And that's when I realized, I mean, there's a couple lessons here, right? The first one is,
Backup plan?
Have a backup plan. I was going to say, stay up until 3 a.m. sweating, but have a backup plan, right?
That's always a good option.
That's what I always tell people when they want to flip houses now. I always tell them at least have 2 exit options, right? Yeah. And I technically did because I could have fire sold it for what I had into it. That was such a depressing thought for, 22-year-old, 23-year-old Brandon, and I was going to make millions of dollars off this and then I would make nothing. That came later, but I don't know if we'll get to that today. But so that's one of them. And also, this is what taught me that partnerships can be really, really valuable. And we'll probably talk about that today because that's one of my favorite strategies in the world is partnerships. Yep. That's what this lesson taught me. I thought, well, wow, I didn't have anything needed. My dad had everything needed, but my dad wasn't going to go flip a house. Yep. So what if we worked on this? What if we did this together? And so since then I've done, a dozen so projects that have all used different partners. And I've always had pretty good luck with that.
Can we move on and get
Let's move on. We'll move on.
Wow, you just keep
Yeah. I like to talk.
All right, so hard money. Really quickly, let's close up on this hard money thing. Do you recommend people use hard money?
I recommend that people can use hard money. I'm not saying that people should or should not necessarily. Hard money has a lot of risks. I mean, it really does. That quick, especially if it's your first deal, that quick time is rough. I mean, you can screw up and you can lose your property. Yeah. That said, hard money lenders have, like I said, a very, very valuable role to play in both for a flipper and for a landlord, because if you can buy the property and fix it up using the hard money lender's money and then go and refinance it or sell it, that can be a terrific way to get started or to get a deal done. Now, granted, most hard money lenders honestly will not, they're not going to generally lend the entire purchase price and the repair costs on a property like this guy did. It's not very likely. It's possible, but chances are you have to come up with another strategy, which then you could say, well, what about a partner? Do you have a partner that can bring in 20 grand? Whatever, right? So there's a lot of creative options you can do with that.
So, I mean, other than the deadlines and timelines and very high fees, potentially, what else do people want to look out for? I mean, any good points of practice when working with a hard money lender?
I would say hard money lenders need you just as much as you need them. I think when we talked with Ann Bellamy on the podcast back one of the early, in the first dozen, she's a hard money lender, right? And that's one thing she talked about is she needs us just like we need them. Hard money lenders are just real estate investors. They're just doing notes instead of whatever. So treat them as a person. They are just a person. They are an investor. Be honest with them up front about everything, and then interview them. I mean, you don't need to go with just because somebody's going to give you money doesn't mean you should be taking that money. I mean, that's a tweetable topic right there.
Great advice. Yeah.
And so a hard money lender might say, sure, I'd love to finance your deal, but if they're a 6-month hard money lender and this is your first flip, that's not a good, I wouldn't recommend that ever because
scary.
Yeah. Who can flip a house in 6 months? Their very first one. I mean, maybe somebody can and you're cooler than me, but it took me a year. more than that. So
right on.
Yeah.
Well, so can somebody use hard money if they're not doing flips? Can you use it for like a buy and hold or?
Yeah, you can. It's dangerous in that situation with me, exactly that situation, right? You can buy a property with a hard money lender and then go refinance into a long-term thing. That's actually kind of a cool strategy. I've used it a number of times now, but you have to have exit strategies even more than you do in flipping, right? I mean, like you got to be able to fire sale it if you need to. Fire sell it, is that the word? You got to be able to fire sell it if you need to. Yeah, you need to know that you can refinance, which means you got to know your numbers. Yep. I didn't know my numbers. I thought 139 was what I was going to sell it at, and it was like it probably would have sold for 100. I mean, I was like that much off. I mean, I was just getting started, but still, it doesn't. I mean, no excuse for not knowing my numbers.
And that's for all the new investors. I mean, I think that's probably the single most important thing that you need to learn before you buy your first property. Yeah. Hands down is knowing the numbers. I know that I got in trouble because I didn't know numbers. I think from all the shows that we've talked to and the countless thousands and thousands of people I've talked to over the years through the forums and site. I mean, really, it all comes down to that. If you don't know how to evaluate a deal, if you don't know what a good deal is, then when somebody puts a deal in front of you, whether they're an agent or another investor, and you can't evaluate and say, you know what? Yeah, you say it's a good deal, but you know what? You don't actually know how to evaluate a deal either. So the deal that you're telling me is a good deal is a terrible deal.
Yep.
You have to know this stuff. You're counting on, and this is not to besmirch real estate agents, but counting on somebody who says, hey, I'm an agent that works with investors could be potentially dangerous for you. You have to know how to evaluate. You have to do it yourself. Numbers.
Yep.
And if they do, that's great, but you want to be able to check and double check it. So there's some good info.
I think even more that's super important, right, for any kind of real estate investing, but it's even more important for low and no money down real estate investing, right? I mean, like the foundation, I say this all the time, but like the foundation of a great creative real estate investment is getting a great deal, and the only way you're going to get a great deal is knowing the numbers. Yep. I mean, you just have to know those numbers. And
you just don't know if a deal's a great deal if you don't know the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, it's so important, I mean, I don't know. I bet you I don't know the number. I bet you 90% of investors out there, not on BP, but other ones, buy a property. They spend more time picking out their wardrobe in the morning than they do on analyzing a deal. There's hey, that's a pretty house. And that's kind of how I did it. And I got lucky on my first, couple. And I fully say I got lucky on that first deal. I made $20,000 for my wedding. But, it's luck rewards those who hustle. Is not a phrase, something like that.
I don't know what it is. Well, just really, really quickly along the lines of this stuff. If you're a new investor and don't know the numbers, definitely check out our Ultimate Beginner's Guide, biggerpockets.com/UBG. Yeah. And not only does that cover the numbers, but it covers pretty much everything else for getting started. And there's a whole chapter on deal analysis. So I definitely recommend that, biggerpockets.com/UBG. And we also have, we've got a set of calculators for flipping and for buy and hold at biggerpockets.com/calc, which is really, really good for helping evaluate numbers. Yeah. But,
and that's, I mean, just to jump in real quick and then we'll move on. Yeah. If you want, anyway, you're the host.
I'm the boss.
No, what I like to say, and I've said this on webinars before because it's so true. If I had the software, the calculators, I mean, even if it wasn't the BiggerPockets one at the time because it didn't exist there, but if I would have done what I do today on the BiggerPockets software, I would not have made a third, or I don't know, 3/4 of the mistakes that I made. The majority of my mistakes I've ever made in my business have been because I didn't do the numbers good enough. It just comes down to that.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, man, let's move on. I going through your story, I know you've got, you got the Cobains, you've got the flipping, and then you got into the big buildings. You got into the apartment complexes, and we'll kind of circle back to the partner thing. But sure. Let's talk about that. You went and bought a big old apartment complex at some point, right?
I did. I mean, not massive, but it's a 24 unit.
Well, that's big enough for most people.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good property.
So what got you to do that? I mean, how'd you get there? Hey, I'm going to buy a couple houses or duplexes.
Sure.
I know you had a couple multis, and then you're like, you know what? Let's just go to 24 units.
Yeah. So, I don't even know where to start the story. So, first of all, I mentioned this on the episode with Ken McElroy. I don't remember what podcast that was we did back a few months ago, but or, I don't know, a year ago. We interviewed Ken McElroy. He is the author of a book called The ABCs of Real Estate Investing. when I read that book, this was back in, must have been 2010. I'm really bad with dates now. Must have been about 2010. I read that book at the library. But when I got started, by the way, I mean, this is just another side note, but when I got started, I went to the library and I got every single solitary book on real estate they had over the course of a year. I read over 100 in one summer on just real estate. And so if you want to know how to get started, read some books. But I read Ken McElroy's book, ABCs of Real Estate Investing, followed by The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing, both by him. And like, it blew my mind to the possibilities of apartment complex investing. And I mean, it's a very basic book. It's not like, 1,000 pages of in-depth, stuff, right? Like, this is like the introduction to why apartment investing works. And I loved it. And I remember reading it on a Saturday. I think I read both of them in one day, right, back to back. And I loved them both so much. The next morning, I met this couple at my church, and I said to them, I mean, I'd known them for years. They had actually seen me in my investing, like over the last few years, flipping houses and doing whatever. And I used to talk about my investing with people just like I do. I'm proud of it. And I mentioned to this couple just casually, I said, yeah, I just read this really good book on apartment buying, and I can't wait to someday buy an apartment complex. And he looks at me kind of funny, and he goes, it's interesting because we actually have an apartment complex we're looking to sell. And it like blew my mind. I'm like how, like, now, you could say that's luck or coincidence. And I hate when people say that, like, yeah, well, I don't get that because, he got lucky, right? Like, the fact
created your own luck by talking about
because I talked about what I do, and I talked about what I love with everyone. Like, I talk to 100 people a month on real estate investing, right? I love this stuff and I talk about it. And so I got in the path of luck. And so he says, I got an apartment complex. It took us a year to actually close on it. We talked about it a lot. And we actually did two different strategies, both of which, are individual chapters in the book that's coming out. But the first one was a lease option. We actually did a lease option first. Let me back up. So what happened is he had sold the property 8-9 years earlier. Okay. And he sold it to a guy, and they used seller financing. They sold it for $550,000 for 24 units back in, this would have been, 8 years before that. So 2002-ish. 2001-ish. The guy who bought it ended up losing it because he had another business that was failing. He was taking all the cash flow from the apartment, and then every time a unit would go empty, he wouldn't replace it because he had no money. So then it would just went from 24 to 23 to 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, down to 11. So when they took it back in foreclosure, they had 11 units rented, and they're an older couple, late 60s, maybe even early 70s. And then they started fixing it up, going to work every day to fix it up at 65, 70 years old. Wow. And they realized very quickly they didn't want to. Well, then young whippersnapper Brandon comes in and I can, fix a leaky pipe and stuff. So they saw opportunity there. And so we don't have time to get into the exact mechanics of why I did a lease option to start with. And then we did seller financing, but essentially had to do with when you buy a property, you have to pay the county's what's it called? Excise tax is what we call it. And on a $550,000 purchase, which they sold it to me for the same price, I would have had to pay that right away. And it was like $15,000 and I didn't have that. And so we did a lease option. So no money down. Then I saved the money, right? So a lease option, you want me to go into that?
No, I want to circle back on the price. So they had sold it to somebody for $550. Was it $550? For $550, 100% rented.
Yep.
And you went and bought it for the same price, $550, this commercial property with 11 units rented.
Correct. So
you were kind of a sucker, huh?
In a way. So that's the thing. 8 years had passed, and so the market went really up and then really down, quite a bit. But rents had gone up by about $100 a month per door, and so rents were a lot better. And yes, I flat out overpaid for that property.
And can you explain that? Why did I call you a sucker? I mean, just for those people listening, because commercial properties, how's analysis done on these things?
Sure. So a commercial property, like anything that's not, single family home or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 unit is valuated by the income that comes in. So it's based on the amount of money that comes in. It's not based on what did the 24 unit down the street sell for, because there isn't a 24 unit down the street. You can't compare them that way. And so you do it based on the income. Well, with 11 units rented out, it was getting half the income that it normally did. So when I did my analysis, it showed me that it was worth about $325,000 based on those numbers. And the reason I paid more is because I knew that I could quickly fix those units up. So a lot of investors would say, no, you should offer $325 or walk away. I'm not so sure because I knew the potential that this thing is worth $1 million in a good market. Completely fixed up and done, it's worth $1 million. So I can pay $550 knowing that I can get it there within 6 months to a year. And that's what we did. So I took, my wife and I, that was the second time I quit my job. I think it was. Yeah. The second time I quit my job was this time.
Okay.
I don't remember what job I had before that. It was, I think, another group home. So I quit my job again. I got a job after that flip I made no money on. Quit my job again, and my wife and I then spent every day over at the apartment complex fixing it up and just doing one unit after another. And the couple that sold it to us, they actually let us do like a step-up plan. So we paid a little bit more every 6 months, knowing that we had to have the money to fix it up. Now, people will say, well, he got lucky. That was really nice of them because he went to church with them, right? But that's not what it was. This couple had a problem, a major problem. Like, who are they going to sell an 11-unit occupied property to? And they don't want to fix it up. So, like, they helped me, I helped them. Then after the place was fixed up, after we got enough units rented out, I was saving the cash flow every month that was coming in at that point. I used that cash flow as a down payment, the $15,000 needed to actually buy the property to cover the thing. And then they carried the contract with no money down, essentially. Gotcha. And so they carried the contract itself. I pay them every month now. We're up to $37.50 a month. I pay them. They travel the country in their RV, and they are thrilled to death. They don't have to worry about it. They have a check in their, in their bank account every month. It's like I wish I was them, right? Like they get the perfect.
They've got an income stream.
They got an income stream. Yep. And it'll last them for the next forever, like as long as they need it for.
Yeah. And
they could sell that note if they wanted to, and we're not going to get into note selling, but they could sell that note if they needed quick cash. There's a lot of stuff that they could do, and it's just all around. It was a really good.
So the only money you needed to put down to actually purchase that was the excise tax, which was the $15,000.
Which was about $15,000. And so here's what I actually did. So the other downside was this. People may wonder, where did you come up with the repair costs, right? Yeah. Because things aren't free to fix up. So here's what I did for that. So I did not buy this property alone. I went back to dear old dad. And I said, this is a good thing though. This is like my redemption, right? So I go back to my dad and say, Dad, I got a problem. Well, I'm more like, I got an opportunity, right? Like, I've got this deal that I can get for $550,000. I need about $60,000 worth of work to do on it. And I will do all the labor myself. I'll manage this thing. I'll run it to the end. And the deal we worked out after a little bit of discussing back and forth was this. He said, okay, I will fund the $60,000. He didn't have the money. I mean, like, he used a home equity line of credit, which is also something we talk about in the book. He used a home equity line of credit on his own house, gave me access to it. I use that money to fix it up, and then I make the minimum payment. So it doesn't cost him a thing. It doesn't even affect him, other than the fact that it's tying up some equity in his house. I make the payment on that, and then we had a deal that I get cash flow on the property. He gets 50% of the proceeds when we sell it someday.
Okay.
And then in turn, he wants to turn that over and do it the next deal, and the next deal, and the next deal, and then someday give it to the kids. So in kind of a roundabout way, like, we worked a solution that worked for him, that worked for me, and we made it work. Again, that's like the perfect definition of creative finance. And again, people are like, oh, you had a dad that helped him. But my dad didn't have he didn't have the money to do it either. Like, it wasn't like my dad was, super rich and he was,
So isn't that, that's what we do though, right? Isn't that, what investors do is they find solutions and being creative is really, it's not hard and it's not necessarily dangerous, right? It could be.
Yeah, sure, it could be. I could have paid $750,000, $800,000 for this thing at the time,
right?
But it wasn't. And I think a good creative investment is a win-win-win-win-win across the board, right? I mean, for the couple that sold it, for me, for my parents, for everybody involved, for my wife, for the people that our resident manager that lived there, like for everyone, it was a good deal across the board for everyone, except for the guy who lost it, obviously. Years earlier, but
how does somebody go and find a property that somebody's seller financing? I can't seller financing. Let's say it 3 times. I mean, for those people who don't have cash and think, oh, well, this might be a good way to go. Is there an easy way to do that, or do you just have to go look at enough properties and ask the right questions?
Sure. There's a few ways you could do it. When I was doing research for the book on no money down and no and low money down, I came across a staggering number, and it said 30% of all homes in America have no mortgage on them. Like, that blew my mind. I thought it was like, 1% of homes have no mortgage.
It's a crazy number.
Yeah, 30% have no mortgage on them. So what does that mean? It means that a third of every house around you probably has no mortgage on it. So my first piece of advice is, ask, because you have a 1 in 3 chance of whatever property you're offering on. You have a 1 in 3 chance of it being owned free and clear. which means that they could do seller financing. And we could, I don't know if we want to get into the whole due on sale clause stuff, but there are some things
there's rules. Yeah.
Yeah. There's rules and there's problems that could come up. And if you want to learn more, get the book or go search BiggerPockets if you don't want the book. I don't care. Or talk to your attorney, all those things. Yeah. So there's a lot of like things you maybe want to look out for. But the fact is, like, there are a lot of opportunities out there. And so if you just ask, that's one. If you want to get really fancy, you could go out to a place like listsource.com where you can buy lists. That's what wholesalers typically do. Which, by the way, the entire last chapter of the book is all on wholesaling. It's an entire chapter on wholesaling. But that's what wholesalers will do. They'll do direct mail lists, and they'll send out a list to 1,000 people. And you can actually find out who has a mortgage and who doesn't. So if you want to do direct mail to only people who have no mortgage, you could essentially do that. So
it's great. That's a great way to go, and relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know how much it is exactly, but it's not bad.
Well, it's easier than spending your time cold calling everybody.
It's probably much easier than that.
You send mail out, say, hey, we're looking to buy property from people who might be, selling, and you're good to go. All right, cool. So you talked about resident manager. You talked about how you found it. Talked about how you financed it. Now, and you have a resident manager today, correct?
I do. I've gone through a couple actually, and we might be transitioning again to another.
Okay.
It's an interesting,
But you're not dealing with the headaches. I mean, you've got somebody in house who lives there, who's got a free place, and in turn they're taking care of it.
Yep. And also, I mean, like, so my wife manages our properties essentially. Yep. She's the one in charge. The buck stops with her. I don't work that much on them because I spend my time on BiggerPockets, and that was kind of the trade we made back when the position at BP came open, and I said, okay, Heather, you quit your job at Starbucks and come do the managing. She hired her mom just kind of to help out for a few $100 a month, just to help out answer phone calls, and then we hired a resident manager, gave him free rent in exchange for doing a certain number of tasks around the place. And so we've been through two different ones, and again, that is not always easy, and here's why. I am not very good at managing people. Josh, you can testify to that, right? Like I'm good at like ideas and creation and doing fun stuff, but when it comes down to like telling somebody that they're doing something wrong and yelling at them or firing them, I am the worst guy on planet Earth for that. And so that's the problem I've had with resident managers. I don't blame them. I blame myself in that I'm not very good at training them how to be better. So just keep that in mind if you're looking into getting a manager who will live on site. Make sure that you are the kind of person that can handle that.
Yeah.
So in the near future, we hope to either hand that whole thing off to property management, an official company, or try to get somebody else in charge of dealing with that person, or just I can grow a pair and learn how to deal with people better.
Yeah, there you go. That might help. That
might help. So
hey, so I want to finish up really quick on this property and then move on. We got a whole lot of stuff to cover, and we're getting through it, man. It's taking forever. Oh boy. It's hard to interview you without you. Tell me about the numbers. So you got this property now, right? Sure. You paid $550,000. Presumably today it's pretty close to completely rented out.
But by the way, earlier I said we had to pay $15,000 for the excise tax. Yeah. Technically speaking, the sellers had to pay excise tax. You don't pay when you buy. I had to pay them a down payment of $15,000 so they could buy it. So my actual mortgage is $535,000. Just people might be wondering.
$535,000 on the note.
Yeah, $535,000 on the note because they needed the $15,000 because they didn't have it to be able to, or they might have had it. They wanted me to pay the $15,000. So anyway, back to you.
Thank you for clarifying.
So $535,000 note today.
Calling out the fact that neither of us caught up on that.
Yeah, I didn't think of that until just now. So $535,000, and then it's worth probably about $1 million, right around there. I mean,
what kind of cap rate is that?
Right around a 9 cap rate, somewhere 9 to 10. It's like I'd say it's a B. It's a B building in a C plus, B minus neighborhood. So it basically means it's a nice neighborhood. It's not going to be a brand new building, A building in a neighborhood. It's in a decent neighborhood. It's in a decent part of town. There's no flood insurance required, which is wonderful. And so it's probably about $1 million, maybe a little bit less. I mean, people are going to offer less if I put it on for $1 million, but.
And if people have questions on cap rates and evaluating commercial real estate, you can jump on BiggerPockets and look up cap rate, or we've got tons of articles on that.
Yep.
All right, cool. So you got this apartment, you cleaned it up, you got it rented. That's awesome. And you were creative in how you did it once again. I'm sure there's lots of people saying, wow, that Brandon sure is lucky. No, smart, man. I listen, I admire it. I really, really do. I don't know a lot of investors who've done as much real estate as you have in as creative a way as you have. So that's awesome. tell me what you've done since then, and then we're going to kind of dig into some of the finer points on some of these creative strategies.
Sure. Since then, I've really gotten into small multifamilies. I really like them a lot. People know that I talk about them a lot. So I bought like a triplex with a partner, and then I bought another triplex with another partner, and then I bought a fiveplex with my wife, and then I bought a duplex in there. So like I really like these small multifamilies a lot.
And were these all just totally creative, no money down properties?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think everything was no money down.
Somebody else's cash.
With somebody else's cash. So, I mean, I can talk about, because they're all partnerships, right? Everyone except for the fiveplex was a partnership. And if you want to know how I funded that one, I wrote a post on, you can check it on the show notes at biggerpockets.com/show92. I will link to the article called How to Buy a Small Multifamily Property. But I can talk about, the other ones were all partnerships, and that's how I managed to do them all, generally without money. There is one that I could say technically I used money to buy it, but I hope to get that money back very shortly. And so, I don't know, but they were all done with partnerships.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into that. Let's talk about partnerships. Here we are, right? This is your bread and butter. How does somebody go and find a good partner if they don't have Daddy Warbucks like you do? I'm just kidding, Mr. Turner.
Yeah. How do they find partners? So there's a few ways. One, we already talked about earlier, is just talking to everybody that you know about real estate, right? Because here's how I explain it. It's like this. Real estate is cool. It's like Fonzie, right? Like people like real estate investors. We thought before we got into real estate, we looked at people that were involved in real estate. I'm like, man, how do they do that? Like, that's cool. Right? There's something just cool and attractive about people who are, fighting the man and out there making millions of dollars. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like there's something cool about it. So people want to be cool and they want to associate with cool people. So I'm not saying I'm cool. I mean, I'm kind of I'm a nerd, but the concept is a cool concept. And so,
of course.
Yeah. So the more you talk about it, the more people want to know more. And so in my entire life, I don't think I've ever once said to somebody, hey, well, okay, I lied. My dad, I did say that to him, but otherwise I never say, hey, would you like to partner with me? Like, I'm looking for a partner. Will you partner with me? They generally always just come in conversation of us, like, so what do you do? How's that work out? Why do you like real estate? I mean, like, how's it going for you? What's your latest deal like? And then somewhere in that, usually they're the ones that pitch it of like, well, if you ever need anything, let me know. If you ever want to work together on a deal. And then, because people want to get into that cash flow stream or the flipping stream, they want to do that. And so that's how I've typically done it. Just people that I know. Every partnership has been with somebody that I know. I've never done a partnership with a random person. It's all been based on relationships. Now, some people, they engage on BP all the time and they get partners and they get financing just off people that have no idea who they are. But I typically only work with people that I know and I trust, because a partnership is like a marriage.
Yes.
Very much so. And so you need to know who you're getting into bed with.
And you should vet,
Yes.
and vet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've had a lot of conversations on the show with podcast guests who have talked about partnerships that have gone really, really bad. And if you have not listened to any of those shows, I highly recommend going through the previous 91 shows of the podcast and finding them, because it's well worth it. Well worth it. All right. So you talk about finding a good partner. You got to get out there and you got to just tell everybody what you do. And then you want to be able to demonstrate, right, that you've got a track record of success, keeping notes and almost having a notebook for each deal and spreadsheets that you can deliver and say, hey, okay, potential partner, here's the last 8 deals I've done. Here's all the numbers. I mean, having that binder or whatever it is a really, really good way to present to these folks. And that's
why I always push people on the BiggerPockets, software calculators, right? Because like I always tell you, like, if you could just print out like an organized thing, you can convince people, not like of a bad deal, but like you can demonstrate why a deal is good if you just, get organized. Like really just get organized. It's amazing what you can convince a bank or a partner or a spouse of if you just have an organized something to show them. So it's huge.
Awesome. All right. So how do you structure them? Clearly, you're not the one who's putting money in. We know your pockets are not quite full. Well, they're getting there. But you're usually finding money partners, right? So what does the deal look like? What do you do? They're putting up all the cash. Is it 50-50? What's your role? Explain all that.
Sure. So typically that is what I've done is they put the cash in, and then I run the deal. Like I bring the deal to the first place. Like I find the deal however I find it, and then they bring the down payment or the entire financing. But typically, like I've done this a number of times, and I really like this strategy where I'll work with a guy. I call him Bob in the book, right? There's a guy, Bob. He has a good job, a good career. He's got a good credit score. He's got a pretty little wife, and like they got their nice little house in the country, and they want to be cool like Fonzie, and so they are happy to jump into a deal with me because they're not going to do it anyway. They've got everything they need but the drive to do it, which I have the drive to do it, and so. Typically, they'll put in the 50% or the down payment for the property. Then they go get a mortgage on the property in their name. Both of us, though, have been on title. And so for those people, I mean, it's a little bit complicated, but essentially the mortgage is in their name. The property is in both of our names. And the banks, every bank that we've worked with have never had a problem with this. I just have to sign a paper saying, yes, I understand that I'm not on the mortgage, and they have to sign that. Whatever.
And do you have a contract with them really quickly before? Presumably you have something in writing so that they don't just go get a mortgage on their own and say, "Ha ha."
Yeah. We have it all in writing, and the original sales document that I draft up with the seller, says me and or signs usually, or one time, I think once it just said flat out both partners, and that's the other nice thing about working with people and people who you get along well with is that things change. I mean, I don't know, I don't even know how to say this, but like. When things go wrong, we just have a discussion. It's not like this formal board meeting we need to go have. It's like, hey, Bob, let's talk about this deal. Here's how I want to structure it. Is this cool with you? That's fine with me. I'm like, okay, well, so here's basically the points I just mapped out on this paper. Can you, let's just sign this so that way there's no second guessing later. What did we say to each other? Yep. That's the biggest problem, right? Like when you don't write things down, like people think that it's because if you go to court, you gotta have something to back it up. Well, that's one of the reasons, but the real reason you write things down is so that you remember what you talked about, so one party doesn't accuse the other later of being weird. I mean, I think that's the most important reason.
Yeah.
Besides,
you want
to protect yourself, obviously.
The legal is one thing, absolutely, but knowing the roles of each person is huge. Most often when I hear about partners fighting, it's because they didn't do a good job of deciding who was going to do what up front. Yep,
that's exactly what it is. I mean, people just say, and they get mad, they distrust each other, and this is one of the pitfalls of partnerships. Like, I'm not if this is not clear already in this podcast, every one of these strategies that I've done has been a pain to do. This is not easy. I'm like the only no money down author to ever say anything, to say,
you're not going to get rich tomorrow.
Yeah, you're not going to get this is not easy. This is not going to make you rich tomorrow. This is much harder than normal investing. Yeah. Creative investing is much harder than normal investing. However, if you don't have the money, what are you going to do? Well, I wish I had a job that paid $500,000 a year and I could drop $100,000 a year on that's not me, right? That's not what we do. So if you got to hustle, you got to hustle. And if you want to be in this game. So anyway, I don't know. So the idea is with the partnerships, they have usually brought in the down payment. They get the mortgage in their name. Both of us are in title. I manage the property, or at least my wife does, or our company does. And then we deal with everything. Problems, like if there's an issue with tenants, we handle everything. And then we split 50-50 in the future, anything that comes in or goes out. Meaning, if something drastically bad happens, and one time we had an eviction, and we were remodeling at the same time, and it wiped out our reserve fund. We had $10,000 saved up in a reserve fund, and we wiped out the entire thing, and we were $2,000 over. So I go to them, and because on this piece of paper it was written that if anything happens, and we both recognize that, I went over there, I said, hey guys, so here's where we're at. We're going to be $2,000 over our number, so we need to start back over again. We need $1,000 each. They wrote the check. Here you go. Great. And they wrote the check. And, it just made that very, very easy. And so we split all future profits 50-50. And people ask me this question. I get this every time I say this, and I know people listening are going to say this too. Brandon, why do you deserve 50%? Yep. Why do you didn't bring any money?
Question.
Yeah.
What'd you bring to it?
Yeah. And here's what I say.
You're useless, right? I
mean, I'm useless.
God.
And because here's what they always say. They could have just gone and got the deal for themselves.
Well, they weren't going to.
Right?
And what?
So my phrase that I say all the time, and people have heard me say it before, is it's like, it's better to have 50% of a great deal than 100% of no deal. Yeah. And that's the truth about the the sell or about the partner. So Bob is better off having 50% of a great deal than all of a deal he was never going to get.
Right.
Yeah. And again, the key there is a great deal, right? I'm not going to go to a partner and be like, hey, you want to earn like 1% on your money and maybe lose some money? It's just not, you got to get a good deal. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the numbers and all that stuff. So that's nice. That's one way to do partnerships. There's a lot of different methods to use partners, but that's just one way that I really
that's how
like.
you do it, right?
That's how I do it. And I've done it. Like, I like it a lot. It feels clean to me.
And what works for you doesn't necessarily, and I guess I want to press upon this. We're talking about what you've done, and the book, also talks about kind of what you've done, and that said, what's in there doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to work for every individual who looks at the book or who's listening to the podcast, which is why, I'm so proud of what we've done on our site, because there's so many different strategies and there's so many different techniques and so many different ways to go about doing things. So when somebody asks a question and they get, 25 different answers that are 25 different ways to do it, it's telling you that there's no one right path. And there's no one path for real estate investors. And we talk about that a lot. And it's important for people, especially new investors, to know that.
Well, and I was gonna say, I think that's like you said it in the foreword to the book. You said, and I love that you said, don't think of this book as a recipe book. Think of it as an art book. And I think that was perfect, because it's not like, okay, step 1, sign this document here. I mean, I have the parts in there that you need to do on a lot of these things, but that's not what it's about. This is different in all of real estate investing, because nothing's black and white. Everything's
creative.
It's creative. It's putting things together. It's how your mind works, not how a step-by-step plan is. And so I thought, an art book is a good way to describe it. It's more of, here's a bunch of different ways you can do things, put them together and make something cool happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we move on, I'm just curious in terms of like structures, right? How do you talked about the partnership. Do you create different entities for each of these deals? Do you just have Brandon Turner Company and each property goes under it? How do you do that really quick?
Sure. So again, of course, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. However, my lawyers and accountants have advised me this is the way that it works for me. So don't just take this and run with it. This is how it works for me.
Please talk to your lawyer and accountant before you go and create an entity or make a decision on how you're going to structure any kind of business. Yeah,
but this is how it works for me in my tax situation. So I like to tell people. So I use LLCs, and I have a different LLC for each property partnership grouping that I have, if that makes sense. So the LLC that I have, or the properties I own with my wife together, that's one LLC, that's an LLC. So there's a few of them that me and my wife own just alone. There's a few that I own with partner Bob, and the few that I own with partner Cheryl. Those are two different LLCs. One with Dad, that's its own LLC. We have one with my wife's parents, that's another LLC. And so every LLC we have a different ownership structure. We have a different LLC for, which just makes sense anyway, right? You don't want an LLC with, I don't know, like a bunch of different people. Yeah, that's really weird, I would imagine. So anyway, that's how I do it. So
nice.
It works pretty good.
All right, cool. So, I mean, we've talked about your path, right? A little summary here, right? We've talked about your path. I mean, you've done, some creative financing techniques. You've used hard money. You've done refi to get out of the hard money deal. I know you've done wholesale deals. So you've done wholesale. You did seller financing. You've done lease options. You've done all these different strategies and used these different strategies to kind of get to where you are with your portfolio. And starting at zero, we're not going to talk about how much money you've got, but I mean, you
millions of dollars.
But if you were to, on these properties where you've come in with partners, if you were to sell your portfolio, granted they're going to get a nice chunk out of it, but you're going to walk away with some money.
Yeah.
And you're so let's just kind of really quickly think about that. You came in here with very little to nothing, right? You started to kind of step up, use creative techniques, pick up each new property. You're not getting all of it, but you're getting a fraction of these profits now, and it's a great way to building wealth.
It is. And let's just say this. Here's a good way to look at it. If you would typically accept, a typical investor might go accept $100 a month in cash flow on property A, let's just say. which means as a creative investor, you just need to go out and find a better deal. You need to go get $200 in cash flow on property A. And then when you split that with your partner or however fancy method you put it together, you still come out okay. And so even if you have to sacrifice a little bit and hustle, whatever, it just means you got to do a better job of finding good deals, which we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure, is one of the things that comes with the new book that's coming out. Is I wrote a second book, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. All right. So we've got this book. We're releasing it today as we speak, right? We're putting it out there. Is this going to tell people exactly how to do these low money down deals? I mean, I know the answer, but
you're interviewing me. Good job.
I'm interviewing you. There you go. So, I mean, what are people going to get here?
Well, so kind of going back to what I said a minute ago, it's like an art book. It's not a science book. It's definitions. It's a little bit more big picture. It's not going to say, I mean, it's hard to say. It's kind of a cross between. I mean, it's not going to say, go knock on their door, say this word followed by this phrase. It's not a script for every single thing in this thing. That's what it is. It's not a script.
It's not a handbook.
It's not a handbook on how to do absolutely.
Or a how-to guide, right? It's not a how-to guide.
Yeah. It's more of an introduction to every one of these techniques. So you can take every one of these techniques and say, let's say you wanted to learn more about owner-occupied investment properties like FHA or flips or USDA or 203K, VA, those things. You want to learn more about them. You can read the chapter on this and then you will know a ton to get going. You can get going from that point, I guess is my point. Yeah, you're going to have to learn more when you talk to a mortgage broker. They're going to tell you more information. Yeah. But this will get you down the path that you want to go and it will open your mind. It's like, the way I describe it is this. My favorite analogy that I use is a real estate investor and a creative real estate investor has a toolbox. The more tools you have in that toolbox, the more projects you can tackle. And so if you've got one tool, then you can do like one job. If you have 50 tools, you can now do a whole lot of jobs because you can mix and match those tools to invent cool stuff. So so I think that's kind of how you can make it work that way.
Gotcha. And before I go on really, really quickly, because I'm sure there's people who are listening who are going to be like, wow, Josh, your whole thing with BiggerPockets was you're not going to sell stuff and you're not going to sell information. And so because I've gotten this before, right? Yep. And really the foundation of BiggerPockets was we're going to do this stuff. We're going to give everything away for free. Mm-hmm. Everything that's in this book. Everything that's in this book can be found on BiggerPockets for free. Yep.
There's not one word in this book that you would say, like, wow, that's never been heard before. Brandon's, coming up with new stuff, right?
I'm creating a new technique here.
Like I just saw one the other day on Facebook. It was like brand new secret strategy to make millions in real estate. And I'm like, there's no such thing, right?
Yeah. And so the reason we did this, I mean, Brandon and I have been talking about this for a while. The reason we did this was we've had a lot of people come to us and say, hey, there's all this information, but it takes some work to kind of dig through and find it. And we decided that it made sense to kind of put this together in a cohesive format that would be easier for people to digest.
Yep.
So thus the book was created, and obviously we're not selling it for $997. This is reasonable. So who's this best suited for? I mean, what about flippers? I mean, buy and hold guys, or can anybody get stuff?
I would say anybody in the basic the big 3 or 4, right? Like if you're a note investor, you'd probably pick up a thing or two, but like I'm not a note investor, so what do I know, right? Like if you are a landlord, if you want to be a rental property owner, if you want to be a flipper or a wholesaler. I mean, the chapter on wholesaling is actually the longest chapter in this book, and the reason why is because it's all about finding good deals, and it's the things that kind of tie in a lot of the other stuff together. Is what do you do once you have them? So it's not just for wholesalers, but it's a anyway, so yeah, I'd say the big 3 or 4 especially would be like flippers, wholesalers, buy and hold, those kind of guys. So
cool. And I mean, it's a silly question, but like what's your favorite chapter, I guess? Like house hacking or wholesaling or?
Yeah, I really like house hacking because I like talking about it, and I really like partnerships. So I mean, if I had to pick 2, or 1, I don't know. If I had to pick 1, I couldn't. If I had to pick 2, I really like the house hacking stuff, like the stuff on like USDA loans, like the group that certifies your beef. Like it's just kind of cool stuff that most people don't know about. Like you can buy a loan through the same government organization that certifies your ground beef. It's cool.
It's why does the Secret Service handle? I mean, the government's all wacky.
Yeah, it's weird
stuff. So. But there's some cool stuff in there. Well, so There's another bonus book that we're selling that we're giving away as part of the package. It was how to find incredible real estate deals. Tell us really quickly about that.
Sure. So, as I was writing the chapter on wholesaling, it ended up becoming like a book in its own. And I'm not going to write the book on wholesaling because I'm not that's not my calling to be a wholesaler. So I actually took that part out of it and I said, well, this doesn't apply to wholesalers anyway. This applies to everyone. So I took that out and I expanded it. I made it bigger and I made it into its own book. It's a shorter book. It's like 15,000 words, which is like, I don't know, a typical book's probably 50.
300 per page.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's a good sized book, but it's not like, a novel. But it's all on different strategies that people use to find deals. So there's a whole chapter on direct mail, a chapter on, just random stuff like that. So if you want to check that out, that comes with, if you buy the ultimate package, which you can tell them what that is.
All right. So yes, we are going to shamelessly use our own podcast to publish to pitch our own books, but we'll keep it quick. So before we get to the fire round, and there are some cool questions coming, so stay tuned. We're gonna test.
And I have not looked at them. I put together I got the little show notes in front of me, but I refuse to scroll down the page because I'm excited.
I refuse. All right, so let's talk about how people can get this book. We've got a couple options. So first option. You can buy what you call the ultimate package. Ultimate
package.
Yes. That thing includes a physical copy of the book. You get the actual not hardcover, but you get the book that you could hold in your hands of the book on investing in real estate with no or low money down, mailed to your house. You get the PDF version to download immediately and the audiobook to download immediately. Plus, you get the second book Brandon wrote and is releasing. We just talked about how to find incredible real estate deals, which is going to help you beat the competition to find deals in today's market. And you'll also get, and this stuff is kind of cool. We put this together really exclusively.
This took a long time.
Yeah. So there's 7 one-on-one interviews between Brandon and some really, really great real estate minds that you guys probably have heard of if you've listened to the podcast. They include Jay Scott, Ben Leibovich, Aaron Mazzarillo, Chad Carson, Douglas Larson, Mike Simmons, Michael Blank. And you also get a 1-hour wholesaling roundtable discussion between 3 awesome wholesalers, Sharon Vornhelt, Jerry Puckett, and Tim Gordon. All those guys, all these people we've had on the show in the past couple of years, and they're all really great investors.
I just want to say also, I just want to shout out to thank those people for their time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those people are awesome and volunteering their time to teach. And share what their stories and how they do these creative deals. It's going to blow your mind. There's such good stuff there.
There's really, really, really good information there.
And that is going to be audio and video, so you can listen in your car. So,
Yep. So if you want to either watch the video interviews or listen to the MP3s, you want to get the ultimate package. This thing is going to run $79 for everything. But what we're going to do is we're going to just do a $30 discount. It's $49 for the next couple of weeks. So if you want that package, definitely get it now as you're listening to this, right? Let's talk about some of the other stuff. For those people who don't want all the extra bonuses, the interviews, all that other stuff, you can get what we call the triple threat.
Triple threat.
Yes. The triple threat, which is the physical book mailed to your house, the audiobook to download right away, and the digital PDF to download right away. You get all 3 for $35 total, which is under $12 a piece. And finally, for those of you guys who want the book in any one of these formats, you can get those. So the physical book by itself is $25, or you can get the digital PDF or audio for $19. So we kind of wanted to make it so people can kind of buy it as they wanted to, whatever format works best for them. So really all this, the book itself is $19 if you just want to kind of be a cheapo. And no, I'm just kidding. It's
those interviews are worth the price of the ultimate package alone. So I don't know. Yeah. If I could push you to do that one.
Yeah. All right. And really quick, if you want to get it, you go to biggerpockets.com/no money and you go on the sales page there and choose whatever you want. So let's get to the fire round, finish this thing up. Brandon, you ready?
Fire round. I'm ready. Let's do it.
We are keeping that in.
Okay, good. We're keeping it in. I ain't editing.
That's awesome. All right. How strict was your criteria for picking houses to flip, and how did you select that criteria?
Well, this has changed. So I used to flip a lot more than I do today. I mean, I haven't flipped a house in that I actually like sold in like almost a year. But I blame BiggerPockets for that. I hang out with you too much. I know. But yeah. So, and besides, my market's not the world's best for flipping. But how did I pick criteria for flipping? Without the question, how do I pick criteria for flipping?
How strict was your criteria for picking houses, and like, how'd you decide on the final criteria?
So number one, I always would filter it through location. So I wanted a good like a location that people want to buy in.
Yeah.
Then I would look at price. And this is where I screwed up a lot. I mean, honestly, I screwed up a lot. Is I'd look at price early on, and that's all I cared about. $50,000, that's great. I'll buy it. Right? Like, the price only tells you part of the story, right? Like, how much work does it really need? I mean, how long is it going to take? I once bought a house that was like 3,500 square feet. Like, somehow the math never occurred to me. Nobody ever told me, hey, if you buy a house 3,500 square feet, it's going to take 3 times longer to fix up than a house at 1,200 square feet. Oh, that makes perfect sense. But nobody ever told me that. So I didn't realize it would take a year to do it instead of 3 months or 4 months. Anyway.
All right. So your criteria seems fairly loose. You didn't quite answer the question.
Yeah.
And how did you choose it? You pulled it out of the air?
Most properties came from the MLS, the bulk of them.
Okay.
But again, the MLS is drying up, and that's why we wrote the book on finding good, incredible deals, is because the MLS is getting harder to find deals on.
Gotcha. And this is the fire round, so if you could...
Yeah. I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Man.
You've always wanted to say that to a guest, and you've never been able to.
Well, I did have a guy, Angelo, who called me a wanker a couple of weeks ago. So that one devolved into some kind of chaos.
I love that guy. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Have you? I know the answer to this question. So the question is, have you ever had to evict a tenant? And I know that answer. And what advice would you give to a landlord with a problematic renter? And you're probably not the right guy to even ask that question to.
Oh, I'm getting good at evictions. So I've only done 3 in 8 years now, or 7 years of doing this. I've only done 3. Yeah. One of them, 2 of them were inevitable. There's nothing I could have done about it. One of them, we just screened bad, is honestly what it comes down to. There were too many red flags on her thing. We let her in anyway. It was a bad idea. So whatever. I definitely learned screening is the number one tool to try to stop an eviction, right? If you want to, I mean, there's all sorts of information on BP about screening. I'll link to some of it in the show notes, but screening, number 1 tip. Number 2, I pay people to leave. Hoping my tenants don't listen to this podcast, but like I'll pay them. Yeah, cash for keys. I'll give them I'll show up and be like, hey, I'll give you $300 if you leave by Friday, and the place has got to be clean. Because I know my lawyer costs $1,200 to evict. I know that they're going to do about $1,000 of damage. So what's better, $300 or $22? $300 in my pride is much better spent than the $22. So
yeah, absolutely. And really quickly on the tenant screening, we wrote the ultimate guide to tenant screening on BiggerPockets, which we will link to also in the show notes.
Sure.
And it's an awesome guide to help folks out if they're interested in screening tenants, which you really should be if you're going to be a landlord. Yes. So definitely check it out. It's free and amazing. All right, number 3. What piece of advice would you give to the investor newbie who's motivated but struggling to finally take that action to get going?
So what advice would I give a newbie who's struggling?
Yeah, somebody who just, having a hard time getting started.
Yeah. I mean, the number 1 tip I give people all the time is there's a quote, I think Jim Rohn said it first and Tim Ferriss took it after that, was, you are the average of the 5 people you associate with the most. So make sure you fill your life as much as you can with those 5 people that you want to be like. And, the main way I say to do that is listen to the podcast. I mean, that's shameless, but it really is listening to 91 episodes of the podcast. If you don't know what you want to do after 91 episodes of the podcast,
you probably don't want to be a real estate
investor. You maybe don't want to be a real estate investor. And maybe that's being mean to some people who are listening, and maybe that just means you need to take action.
Make a decision, and just go with something.
Or find, and then secondly, if it's not the podcast, maybe that's not right for you. Some people listen to the podcast and the audio isn't how they learn best. Maybe you learn best by hanging out with an investor in real life. Maybe that's how you learn.
Local RIA,
So if you have listened to 92 episodes and you're not yet jumping in, it might just be that you're not an audio learner, whatever. You want to learn from somebody that can give you more direct. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Here's a good one. All right, your tenant calls you with 5 repair issues. Your rehab contractor disappears for 5 days, or your rental catches fire. Which one of these stresses out for you? Which one stresses you out the most?
Were you talking to my wife today? Those are every day, right?
Well, you're always stressed out.
I'm always stressed out, right? And I'm trying
by the way,
I'm trying to de-stress.
Everybody who's listening.
Yeah. This isn't
pay
easy.
attention. This is not easy. And again, all the gurus and all these guys are like, this is great. You're going to get, it's not easy.
It's work.
And it's absolutely, absolutely not stress-free. Investing in real estate comes with a lot of stress.
Now, here's like one thing that I found is that the more systems I create for my life, the less stress I am. However, the problem with that is one of the main systems I've invented is have my wife take care of problems. That doesn't fix my stress problem, right? Because then she's stressed.
That creates stress for Heather.
That creates exactly. Yeah. Nobody told me that before. So now I'm like trying to figure that system out because I built this whole system around her. So anyway, what stresses?
Stop calling your wife a system. That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. Sorry, hon.
Hopefully she's not listening.
Yeah. So they all stress me out to a degree. The ones that have the better systems in place, like evictions, don't stress me out anymore at all. Because like I have a process down. It's like I offer them money to leave, 3-day notice when they're late, and then if they don't leave after the 3 days, I serve the this and that. I go to my lawyer, offer them the money. Like I'm not going to go into the entire process, but I have a process down, and my wife handles it, and it's just whatever. Worst case scenario, I'm probably in $2,200, right? Like, and I got a security deposit from them, so those don't stress me out. The things that don't have a system for. The things that are like fly by the seat of my pants those are the things that stress me out.
Well, I remember you and I were on a call late one night. This was a couple months ago. And you're like I saw your eyes just open up and you're like, Josh, I got a call. And there were gunshots at houses.
Yeah.
And you're like freaking out. You're like, what do I do?
Yeah, that's one of those things you can't plan
call
for.
The cops.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do I? This is what you do. You call the. Well, should I go down there? Should I?
Here, the story was.
You probably want to call the cops. You don't want to be there. There's a guy running around with a gun.
I got to tell that story real quick. Okay, I know this is fire around, but real quick. So my resident manager calls me, and he's a young guy. And he calls me. He's like, "Hey, Brandon, I got to talk to you. There's a guy, I just walked out to the garbage dumpster at the apartment complex, and there's a guy sitting in his window with a big rifle. And I caught eyes with him, and it freaked me out, so I ran away. And I'm like, and then he's like, and then I got back to my apartment, and I heard a gunshot. And so like he's thinking this guy broke into an apartment and then shot somebody. He was hunting squirrels, is what it was. The guy was like,
I often sit at my window.
Yeah, the guy was he had like a squirrel that was like eating stuff on his back deck. So he's like, I'll take my rifle and go shoot a squirrel. And it was like a BB gun, supposedly, though I don't buy that. I think he just didn't want to get a felony when the cops showed up. But anyway. And
being that you live in Podunk, he probably cooked that sucker. And
he probably did. I mean, like everybody in my county has a gun. So it's actually fairly normal to have a gun. Like we all have guns. Right. But you don't sit in a window and... It might have been a raccoon. It might have been raccoons, not squirrels. I don't remember. Anyway, moving on.
Awesome. Good story. All right. What is your what's your best time-saving hack?
Best time-saving hack?
Yeah, but like prioritization, time-saving for your business.
Sure. Ooh, that's a good fire-round question. I'm going to go with...
By the way, anyone listening, notice all the compliments that are coming my way. Normally, I'm just getting beaten up by this guy, but he knows today the game just changed.
Yeah, this is weird. I'm going to go with this as it's making a list. I mean, lists are important, but more so than that is prioritizing those lists on what has to get done
and put it in the calendar. After that article
I read. Yeah, that was an amazing article. Yep. Anyway, I'll try to find a link to it, but it was all about that. And I've done that for that's my favorite tip. It's my newest tip too. I just been doing it for like a week now, and it's wonderful. Yeah,
this was a great article Brandon found, which talked about not just creating a to-do list, but taking that to-do list and putting the items on your calendar. Yeah. Because when you have a to-do list, you're never going to get to it. If you actually put it on your calendar and say, hey, this time slot is set for this thing, you're going to actually force yourself to do it.
Yep.
It works. Cool. It works. All right. Let's see. What's the most creative thing that you've done to get your properties rented?
Facebook advertising. I just started that recently.
To find renters. Really?
Yeah, to find renters. Yeah, I started doing that. I started saying just putting my apartment like vacancies on there, and I just say apartment in Aberdeen, starting at $495 a month in rent. Here's a phone number. And
do you target it to the local people?
I target it to people only within like 20 miles of the apartment complex. And here's what I find: it's not the people that rent it end up finding it. It's like their mother or their friend or their sister, and they tag them in their face in the thing. They just like at mention or whatever they call it on Facebook. They tag people, and so I get like 20, 30 tags in a thread, and it'll cost me $10, and I'll get like a ton of leads. It's really kind of really cool because nobody's doing it in my area.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's
fascinating.
Great idea. Nice, nice. Yeah, I would never have thought that would work. And
yeah, I didn't either, and I tried it and it worked, and I got a tenant. I mean, like it was better than the newspaper, not as good as Craigslist. Craigslist still is our best.
Cool. All right, most valuable life lesson you've learned from your real estate work, and I think that's it.
All right, I'm gonna go with this because I didn't say it yet. Always plan for property management and maintenance, whether or not you do it yourself or not. Who
Absolutely.
cares? If you want to do it yourself, do it yourself. I'm not gonna say don't because I do it, right? But if you don't plan for it, if you don't budget for it, you can never get away from it. And that's kind of where I'm at today. I mean, that was my early mistake with the apartment. When I ran the numbers, I mean, I could get away from it, but I'd lose most of my cash flow and I'm too greedy and I want it, right? So that hurts. But if in my head, if I would have separated those two things of cash flow and this is what I pay myself for property management, it would be so much easier to say, okay, no, I'm no longer going to pay myself for property management. Now I'm going to pay this person for property management. Yeah. I'm still getting the cash flow. It's a weird mental thing, but it's important budget because if you're successful, yeah, you can manage 1 property, 2 property, 3 property. You can't manage 50, 60, 70 properties. Yeah. And so and you're going to be successful. And so why not just plan for it today?
Yeah. Nice.
Life lesson.
All right, cool. Well, that's it. Let's move on to this is the famous 4. I don't think it really goes like that, but yeah, since we're all in monster truck voices, we'll do that.
Good.
All right. So first question, favorite real estate book, not including your own, Brandon.
All right. So I knew this question was coming.
Wait,
I did.
Really?
I knew this was coming. And so I sat down. Yeah, I sat down this morning and actually tried to think of my favorite, and I really had a hard time. So I'm going to list a few, and I know that's wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. So Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of the first books I read that really got me interested in real estate in general.
Sure.
The ABCs of Real Estate Investing, which I said later, by Ken McElroy, was huge. Mm-hmm. One of the most important, if I had to pick one favorite, it would probably be The Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing by Spencer Strauss and Martin Stone. Okay. Like that was the most instrumental in terms of defining the path that I wanted to go down, like buying property, these style. I modeled kind of my like 7 years of 7-figure wealth book, which we give away in the file place. I modeled it after this book in a way, the strategies that I learned in that book. So, and then Landlord and on Autopilot by Mike Butler. Yep. All these have been mentioned before on the podcast, but they're all just great books.
Nice. Good choices. Yeah. All right. Favorite business book, and I think I know what some of these are going to be. And finally, I have one book that I can't get grief about, but that's fine.
All right. So number 1 would be, so these are the books that at different points in my life made the most dramatic impacts, right? So like my life can be defined by like moments of books. Like it's really funny. I divide my life in terms of what book I recently read, these business ones. Nice. And so the first one ever, like I said earlier, was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a business book as well as, right. So
that's more of a motivational book. I mean,
it is. I
don't really call it much.
Yeah. It's a mindset book, right? So the first one that defined my life was that one. After that one came The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Just like transformed the way I thought about money. After that came The Lean Startup, which doesn't apply as much for real estate, but it's really good for BiggerPockets stuff. Yeah. And then finally, the last one I just read last week, the only book I have ever in my life sat down and read all the way through and then picked it up and read it all the way through again. I've never read the book twice in a row, but it was so good. And it was recommended on the podcast here. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller. Blew my mind. Like, I mean, I'm still like processing it. I have pages of notes on this thing. Yeah. So if you've not yet read The One Thing, it's an amazing book for any business or real estate investor. It's seriously amazing. And I'm going to make Josh read it next. So,
yes.
And 4-Hour Work Week. Come on. That was the other one.
Oh, man.
That's what got me interested in internet stuff, is why it started my BiggerPockets phase of my life.
It's a good book. I finished it. Don't bother me. And don't forget Pitch Anything, which
Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Yep. Yeah. That was a great book for learning. Yeah. Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. That was my
I like how I'm telling you what your favorite business books are.
I wrote them down to you earlier.
All right. So hobbies. I know you do real estate. You're a BP guy. I mean, you're a busy guy. You've got your Saturdays, Sundays that what do you do, Brandon? What do you do for fun?
I hang out on BiggerPockets a lot, right? Like I hang out on BiggerPockets a lot because I really do. Like I find myself, that's like everybody has kind of like their fallback position in life. What do they do when they're like, and a lot of people, 90% of Americans, it's TV. They fall back to TV. When there's nothing to do, they fall back to TV. I end up on the forums every time. So I'm like, that's what I enjoy doing. I also play guitar. I like guitar a lot. I play that all the time. Drums. And then my probably favorite thing on planet Earth is to travel.
Nice. What's the one thing that our listeners have never heard you say about yourself? One interesting thing. I'm mixing it up, man. It's going to be the famous 5. Just
in one given week of my life, within a 7-day period, I shaved my head into a mohawk.
Nice. I have pictures, by the way.
Yeah. I kissed a girl. My first kiss ever.
Okay.
This was my first year of college. I kissed a girl because I never had a girlfriend in college. I asked my first girl out, who was the girl that I kissed. Well, I asked her out and then I kissed her. And then
her when she was like, yes, all right.
Yeah, no, it was like 5 days later. And then I dunked a basketball for the first time in my life. My only basketball dunk ever was the same day that I asked my current wife, that she became my wife. That was the day. So there's something nobody knows about. I had the most epic week a person could have. All started with the mohawk.
Nice. Yeah. So if you're thinking about investing in real estate, shave a mohawk.
Josh did it too. It's a thing.
I used to have a mohawk.
You used to have a mohawk too?
Yeah. I've got some photos.
Yeah.
And I'm actually shocked because Brandon's like 8 feet tall, and the fact that he's dunked once is somewhat pathetic.
I can't jump. I have no vertical.
There was a movie made about this.
Yes, there was, and I
all right, me. Last question. And I'm not going to get this right, so you may have to actually ask yourself. There is a reason that Brandon asks this question every week because I can't even say it, and he could barely say it. So, what sets apart successful investors from those who never take action and end up doing anything or whatever it is?
Yeah, give up, fail, or never get started.
Yeah. So, what sets these guys apart?
Yeah, and it's kind of what you just said. It's in my mind, it's very simple. It's people who are a person of action. Are you a man or a woman of action? I mean, for everyone listening to this podcast right now, ask yourself that. Are you a person of action? And when I look at my life, that is the thing that's defined my life so far, is that everything that I think I want to do, I do. Yeah. Whether or not I'm going to be good at it or not, I don't know. Like, I just do it anyway. I'm like, I'm going to write a book. Boom, I wrote a book. You know, like, it's like, I have to do it because I take action because I feel I have to. And I think that's the one trait that's gotten me to where I am today.
I think that is probably the single best trait for becoming successful. If you talk to the richest of the rich, the most successful in pretty much most fields, that's going to be something that's repeated. So I think that's awesome. Wow. Well, here we are. Not quite the longest podcast,
not quite.
Which is going to make Ben Leibovich happy. Still,
I just spent the last week with him in Ohio. Me and Ben hung out. Good time.
Lima, Ohio. There you go. Yep. There you go. All right. So, Brandon Turner, where can people find out more information about you, sir?
You can send me a telegraph or a letter, but your probably best bet is going to be on BiggerPockets.com.
Nice.
That's where I hang out.
Awesome.
Or right here, same time, same channel next week.
Awesome. Well, listen, man, I think people are going to really love this. I know people have been dying to hear more about your story, and you pepper it in every once in a while, but kind of getting the full package was really fun and insightful. And so thank you very much for taking time away from work to be on the show.
No problem. I'm going to need a note later to give to my boss, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think I might write that for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Right on, man. Well, I know you're not my co-host, but I'm going to let you actually wrap the show. So why don't you tell people more about this whole, what they should be doing here, just following us on different places and doing different things.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, wow, this is cool. I feel honored. All right. If you want to, connect with us on BiggerPockets, please do so. If you're not a member already, join BiggerPockets. It's free, and you can do so at BiggerPockets.com. If you're not following us on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or G+ or any of those, you definitely should. We share a lot of cool stuff there. And if you have not yet gone to BiggerPockets.com/no-money, you probably should head over there right now because you can get the book. Yep.
Yeah.
$49 for the next 2 weeks. Go get it before the price goes up. And with that, we're done, I think. Got anything else to add?
I'm Josh Dorkin, signing off. Thanks for listening, guys.